Matt, for the sake of time, we'll start.
Morning, everybody. Good morning, and welcome to our third stop on the IFA's Open for Opportunity Roadshow. We're delighted to be here at Thomas Jefferson University this morning for a great roundtable talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the role that the franchise business model plays in that. I'm Matt Haller, the president and CEO of the IFA, and this roadshow and the Open for Opportunity campaign is really all about bringing the franchise community and other stakeholders together to talk about the value of franchising around four key pillars. The pillars of this campaign are focused around diversity, around veterans, around the workforce, and the work that our members do in their communities. Franchising is really driving and leading the economic recovery coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. And one of the things that we consistently hear from the public is that franchising is both not fully understood and people are not fully aware of all the opportunities that franchising creates in local communities. So that's what the Roadshow is all about, taking our message out around the country and into communities and bringing diverse stakeholders together to talk about the business model, challenges that our members are facing, the challenges that people face getting into franchising in certain communities, and some solutions for helping solve some of those challenges. So I'm grateful to Richard for pulling together such an incredible panel here. We've got a wide range of perspectives, and I think we're looking forward to getting started.
Excellent. And I'm Richard Snow. I'm the Vice President for the SBA National Franchise Program at WSFS Bank. WSFS is one of the oldest, largest financial institutions. We've been around since 1832. And this is important for us because we have a national franchise program, and what we do is support those brands with access to capital. We see that to be one of the most important issues and most important barriers to a franchisee when they're looking to grow that opportunity. So we felt this was a great partnership and synergy because I'm also the chair for the Black Franchise Leadership Council. And with the Black Franchise Leadership Council, we want to engage more Black entrepreneurs to support them in increasing and growing their franchise opportunities, units, brands, ZOR and Z-side. So I think it's important because it changes communities. And this is what this is about changing communities, changing the generational wealth narrative, and being more inclusive. So this roadshow tells those stories because stories connect people. And I think that's the most important part of this. So at WSFS, we're proud of this because we stand for service. Service not only to the bank, but to our community, to the people that we serve, and to everybody within here. So it's important for us to create these partnerships and develop this community. And just kudos to the IFA, kudos to my company. I'm more than proud to be a servant leader of this organization. And next, we would like to introduce Thomas Jefferson University's Letty Santarelli. She's head of sponsorships and special programs to talk about why this was important for them to support us in hosting.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Opportunity Roundtable discussion presented by WSFS Bank and the International Franchise Association. My name is Letty Santarelli. I work at Innovation at Jefferson. We're fostering ideas transform into products and services. So recently, Innovation at Jefferson designed a program called Rise Up Philly, a Shark Tank-like business competition supporting minority entrepreneurs in Philadelphia, where we had the fortunate chance to work with Richard Snow at WSFS Bank. Richard mentored many of our new entrepreneurs, making a direct impact and teaching them creative ways to receive access to capital and develop their business plan. And welcome Matt Heller, President of the International Franchise Association, for investing in Philadelphia entrepreneurs and the awareness of franchise solutions for small business ownership. We hope you enjoy the information you received today, and good luck with your hopes, plans, and dreams for successful business opportunities in franchising. Thank you.
So now we get to introduce our amazing panel. Thank you for all of you that are here. So I'm just going to give their name and their title, and then we'll start our first question. Matt will lead off with our first question. So we have Regina Hairston. She's CEO of the African American Chamber of Commerce. Regina, thank you for being here. We have Devin Mitchell. He is a franchisee for Anytime Fitness. He also serves on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Specialty Council of Self-Esteem Brands and Anytime Fitness. We have David Dix, president of the Pennsylvania Chamber for Black-Owned Businesses and also CEO of Luminous Strategies. We have Alicia Viscanti. She's fantastic, and she's CEO of FranceServe. And Alicia has been an advocate for the franchising space and DEI space, and we also serve on the board, the diversity board together. We have Blessy Thomas. She's a partner at Innovate Capital Growth Fund, and can't wait to hear information from you in regards to access to capital and alternative ways to create that access. And we have Joe Johnson. Joe is the CEO and president of Disrupt Foods. He's also a partner within Malcolm Inc., and they're Papa John's franchisees. So we're going to get started, and I'll pass it over to you, Matt, from a question standpoint.
Great, thank you so much, Richard. So you mentioned that franchising and this campaign it's driven and powered by stories, and there are a lot of great stories in the franchise business model. There's also, I think, really important data that highlights the outsized impact of people of color who have gone into business in the franchise model. According to the U.S. Census, 30.8% of franchise businesses are owned by people of color. That is 50% more than non-franchise businesses. Be that as it may, though, there are still challenges to getting into the franchise business model for many underserved communities. And what I wanted to do is just pose a question for the entire panel. What more can the franchise sector and partners and suppliers in the franchise sector be doing to raise awareness of the opportunities and address some of the challenges that still exist for people who want to go into business in the franchise model? And it is a open choice question, so let's nobody be shy. I know that it's still a little early here.
Well, if the panel doesn't mind, I'll go first. Good morning. I'm Regina Harrison, President and CEO of the African American Chamber of Commerce. And what we like about the franchise model is it provides an instant network. So I want to talk about that a little bit first. So as we know from a study that was done by McKinsey Consulting, the barriers to access to capital and access to information and networks are prevalent in the Black community. And so this provides an opportunity to navigate business ownership by having that network, that franchise. You have a blueprint. And so we would suggest being more visible, making those opportunities more readily available, and partnering with organizations to get that message out. And telling your story, making sure that Black businesses understand that this is a viable opportunity.
I'll jump in next. I'll say, franchising, it's really probably one of the most powerful platforms for Black and brown wealth creation in the country. And I think where franchisors, key stakeholders in this industry can help is really helping to craft intentional strategy, that'll create more equitable opportunities and different pathways to parity. For example, franchisors have tons of relationships with lenders. Some of them own and operate their own restaurants, so being very intentional about their refranchising strategy and initiatives, as well as helping to connect these Black and brown entrepreneurs to these different resources and being their support in doing so.
Thanks. I'll jump in. My name's Alicia Viscanti. I'm the CEO and president of FranceServe. And what FranceServe does is we help people identify the franchises that are best for them. We represent close to 700 brands. And the things that we find, Richard was talking about how franchise ownership can change communities. I see it change people's lives, right? It starts as an individual basis, and then it expands out to the communities, because people think of franchising as this big, conglomerate or, off somewhere, but the actual franchise owners are individual people in that community that are serving that community. So it impacts not only the franchise owner, but all the people who work for that franchise owner, the employees, and of course all the people that they serve in that community. So one single franchisee ownership can have a tremendous impact on the neighborhood and on people's lives in general. And I think one of the things that's happening with the IFA and franchising in general is the concept of education. People do not realize that franchise ownership can be affordable. And when you look at diversity and you look at the communities, people think you have to have $1 zillion to open a franchise. That's not necessarily the case. There's a wide range of investment levels. And I think that's really necessary to educate people so that they understand, yes, they have an opportunity. They can come into franchising. They can be welcomed into this community. We call it the Fran family. You know, it's the franchise family. And I think as we embrace diversity into franchising, the family grows, everybody wins in that regard, and it's really what the purpose is for the IFA coming into local communities like this. And I cannot tell you how thrilled, truly, I am to be here. So,
Alicia, thank you for that, because you mentioned community, and that's a great segue to our next question. So within that community, if this is a tool that can be utilized to grow that community, what are the challenges and how are we tackling those challenges? So I'll open that up to the panel as well. How are you tackling some of those challenges? What do you see, and what are some of the results of that?
I can kick off there. I think it's no shock that access to capital is just generally one of the biggest challenges, or the biggest challenge in this context, or any context for minority businesses, Black and Brown-owned businesses, or those who are getting started. So in terms of the question of what are we doing about it, I think a couple things. Richard mentioned Innovate Capital Growth Fund. Innovate Capital Growth Fund comes out of a long-standing nonprofit, the Enterprise Center, who's been around for 30-plus years. And our focus is these two areas of capital, driving capital, and not just generally capital. We're trying to mix it up with a diverse type of capital so that it meets the need of the business and what they need for that context, whether it looks different, right? So equity addresses more patient capital and what a business may need for different types of strategies, i.e. bringing on C-suite leaders or major technology developments and so on. Trying to fund that through debt may not make sense in that scenario. However, for payroll, working capital, some of that debt could be the answer for that. So what we've built out is kind of a diverse range of asset classes. One is through our CDFI, where we lend up to $500,000 in business loans per business, so that's an option, as well as the Growth Equity Fund focuses on our average investments. We would estimate around $2 to $3 million per business, and pretty industry agnostic. And the goal of it is really focused on patient capital for businesses to drive their strategy in sufficient time, right? So generally somewhere between 3 to 5 years of time frame for them to work with that capital. So, that's a little bit of a color to how are we trying to meet that need, that major need of access to capital there. The other piece is that we won't be able to do this on our own, right? The capital need is so significant that no one entity is going to be able to do it. And so what we're trying to do is build this nucleus of investors and lenders that come together around this focus of access to capital. And we do that through different services like the MB Equity Multiplier at the Enterprise Center, which focuses on connecting minority businesses at any stage, kind of any business model, to different types of capital investors, whether that be lending or especially equity investors, which typically are not easy to access for a lot of Black and Brown-owned business leaders.
Any other input on that question?
Yeah, I'd love to. Again, David Dix with Luminous Strategies in the Pennsylvania Chamber for Black-owned Business. I think when you think about the barriers, part of it is just, some of the things that we don't really talk about. I was talking to Alicia before, and I was like, you guys are like a really cool club, and all we want to know is what's the password, what's the handshake, and how do we get in the club? Because African Americans have established themselves, they have resources, they have revenues, and now we have organizations like Enterprise Center we can connect to a multiplier effect, but we just need to get the password so we can get in the club. So I love to see IFA doing these roundtables, going around the country, engaging with the community to say, we're a club and it's really cool, but you can also become a member, right? And I think these kind of conversations are super important. When we think about barriers, we have to look at the systemic part of just how we don't interact and haven't interacted in the past, and then make a commitment to change that.
I think one of the next questions, from your point, Devon, speaking to you as a franchisee at Anytime Fitness, what were some of your challenges as a Black man starting a brand, and now you work within the DEI council for that particular brand, in Delaware. What did you see as some of the challenges for you, and how did you overcome?
So, thank you, Devon Mitchell, again. The challenges for me was really understanding that you belong in this space as well, right? Is you take an effort and said, here's an opportunity, you look at it and said, I think I can be a part of that. But when you look around, are you seeing other people that look like you? Can I get support? And starting out as a new business owner, it's a challenge because part of it, who do I speak to, right? When something happens, can I call someone and say, hey, I've got this problem, I need a new accountant, or here's what's going on, and you're like, literally, you've got to go figure out all this by yourself, right? And it took me a few years to realize that there were other resources out there. There were other franchise owners. There were other institutions, lending institutions, other groups that would help you to grow that. And seeing that allowed me to kind of say, you know what? How do you help other people, other men, other young men, young women? How do you help them engage in that and let them know that franchising is an opportunity, right? It's not, you don't have to do all the heavy lifting by yourself. There's tons of people out there that want to go help. How do you engage them? And I think being visible, right? Being able to have more of this in the places where you want to make an impact, right? With the people that you want to make an impact, not continue to do that, because it's not going to be one, it's going to have to be multiple. Because part of that, we don't really think it's really for us. I think that you've got to understand that that's a conversation as well. Folks think that this might not be the thing that I'm supposed to do because I really don't see anyone else, right? Mm-hmm. Folks come into my gym, I first started, and I had a challenge to say I was the owner, right? And one day my wife had to tell me, you're the owner. You can literally tell people that. And I didn't even know it was something that it was a crutch for me, but it was that implicit bias that I don't know where it came from. But understanding that there's other resources out there and engaging in those resources. Thanks.
If I may add, just, and certainly identifying with what, Devon's experience, that's why, platforms like this matter so much, right? People get to see, there's other young Joe Johnsons, Devons out there that get to see themselves in us, right? That representation matters so much. I remember when I started out, I wanted to get in franchising when I was 21 years old. It was my last year in college. I'm exploring on the internet about franchising. It wasn't until I saw Junior Bridgman and Magic Johnson that I think it was real for me. It was that see it, be it feeling at that point. So, I couldn't agree with you more about the importance of platforms like this, events like this, to help amplify the voices of color in this industry that could have such a tremendous effect in terms of creating awareness about the opportunities that exist in franchising.
Well, and that's a great point. I said on this radio interview this morning, part of the reason doing this campaign and focusing on these different pillars is, and there's a lot of stories as part of it, you can't be it unless you can see it. And that's exactly the point you're making, Joe. One of the pieces of data that I think we're also incredibly proud of in franchising from this Oxford economics report is that black-owned franchises earn 2.2 times a similarly situated independent business in that same category. But it takes work, right, to succeed in franchising. It's not there's no guarantee of success. Maybe both for our franchisees, can you talk about, the support from the brands that you guys are affiliated with? And also, what those brands may be doing specifically, and this would be for the whole panel, that you've seen to be more intentional about outreach to communities of color, what's working, because we have 1,100 brands inside our association. One of the missions of the Black Franchise Leadership Council is, and the Diversity Institute, which Richard serves on, is to teach and train brands how to reach more diverse audiences. Brands want to do it, but oftentimes don't know how, and they may not be diverse within their brand leadership. So that's part of the challenge too. So maybe kind of a two-part question there for the panel.
I guess that one's for me as a franchise owner.
Yeah. Well, and you're wearing the kind of the brand hat now as DEI leader within Anytime, right? So.
Well, so from a Anytime Fitness standpoint, right, as an owner, when we look at the DE&I space, Anytime Fitness has been tremendous, allowed us tremendous support from day one, right? Having you go out to the facility, you kind of really learn what the operating processes are and how do you deploy that to your facility. And there's ongoing training that whenever you need, they're there, right? One of the important things with Anytime Fitness is it's really about improving the self-esteem of the world, right? And because doing that through a fitness brand may sound difficult, but it's easier to said than done. Everyone that walks into our doors needs help,
Yes.
right? They're coming because they need some help, and it's our job to listen and understand how can we serve them, what are the needs, what are the things they're asking, and how can we provide that resource. Anytime Fitness specifically started the DE&I focus after the murder of George Floyd, how we kind of engaged and wanted to see how can they help, right? How can they be a catalyst for change in their communities and within the franchise brand. And for that, for me, was a thing where I said, I'll be on board. I'd like to help in any way, shape, or fashion that I can. So as far as engagement and with that and kind of helping them to understand what are the things, how do we engage our Black and brown members of the franchise network, I'm there to go help them do that.
Yeah, I'll add as it relates to Papa John's and that brand. I think to give tremendous kudos to Rob Lynch and his leadership team. I think Rob gets it. They listen and act very intentionally. We have some tremendous leaders leading D&I at the brand, creating different programs and crafting different strategies that really are inviting to Black and brown leaders to get not only work within the corporate organization, but also to invite Black and brown franchisees into the system. So, I'm proud of some of that work. I mean, there's always more work to be done, but I think it starts. It always starts from the top down, right? And the leadership is bought in. The key stakeholders are bought in. I think you then start to see actions and intentional actions start to take place from there.
Yeah, I'd like to just jump in on something. You were talking about the password, right, and the keys to the club.
She's going to give it to me.
But there's a royalty attached. What's tragic for me in hearing this, right, and my experience with diversity is that's exactly right? The Black and brown community are looking for the password, and the franchise, right, the franchisors are saying, how can we access great people? We're standing on each side of the door, and we don't know how to connect to each other, right? So franchisors are looking for people who have passion about the business, who want to grow the business. And of course, there's plenty of that in the Black and brown communities and in others, Latino, all of it. And so how do we get this connection, right? We have two sectors that want to be together, and they don't know how to do it. And that to me is tragic, because I see franchising really being a great equalizer, right? There's no preliminary, you have to have a master's degree or a bachelor's degree. There's not that. All of that gets removed. And franchisors will support, teach, educate their franchisees. Their success, their franchisee's success, is the franchisor's success. So they have a vested interest in wanting their franchisees to succeed. The question is, what's the passcode? How do I get in the club? Here's the real tragic. You already have the passcode, and you are welcome to the club. The problem is, like I said, we're both standing on each side of the doors, and we don't know how to open that. And hopefully, facilities like this, opportunities like this, but also all of you guys, be curious, ask questions, keep the communication going in your circles, because once you do that, then you have connections here, you have voices. We can open that door. You can open the door. That's always said, fortune favors the bold. You got to take the step, right? And everybody's waiting for someone else to take this. Heck, let's just walk through the door. Let's walk through the door.
I'd just like to add to that. We already have the model, right? So the African American Chamber of Commerce has been in existence for 28 years. We sit at the intersection of connecting consumers to producers, or franchisees to brands. What we have to do is amplify that message, and also we have to realize that the collaboration that we see before us, this is exactly how we're doing this. So David and I, we set at making sure that we're connecting folks and that we're advocating for policies that are going to make it conducive. We work with the Enterprise Center. We work with Lendistry to make sure folks have access to capital. So it's just about amplifying that and working stronger and harder together to make sure that we are connecting folks to the opportunities. We know the opportunities exist. We're all doing the work that making sure that it happens. So we need to amplify that, and it goes beyond us. I see one of my board members sitting in the audience with WSFS, Ron Davis. I'm sorry, Ron. I was about to say Davis, but I see Ron Dutton sitting in the audience. We have a coaching and capital program. When we have a cohort of business owners, we help them before they get to the capital because we know there are things that need to happen to have access to capital. And it's our partners like WSFS that helped us provide a grant to make sure that our members have CPAs, that they have access to professionals. We have the model. It's about supersizing that, working with the Enterprise Center, working with Lendistry, working with the PA Chamber, working with IFA to make sure that that word is out there and that we're doing more and that we're making sure that everyone is working together to get to where we're trying to go.
And I think that is important because we talk about this door, but what breaks down that door is the disruption. So I'm going to go to you, Joan. Well, I want you to talk more about what you're doing to educate players within the NFL, what you're doing to educate them with a model of franchising, because just because you have the capital and you have the means, there's still an education component of it. So what are you doing through your model and your partnership with Malcolm to increase that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think for a very long time, I mean, athletes have been, after their playing careers, they've joined the franchising community as franchisees. In the last year, we created a platform called Leafly Franchise Partners, along with my partner Malcolm Jenkins, to help educate and guide athletes in terms of, franchise selection. Because athletes, just like any other successful black or brown person, right, is looking to diversify their portfolios and invest. We wanted to make sure that they had the proper education. So we really took an education-first approach with Athlete Franchise Partners. We host seminars and talking to various athletes about the benefits of franchising, what to look out for, the risks, educating them on the FDD, truly just surrounding, wrapping our arms around them, around the education process as they're making their decisions, and then helping to make meaningful connections with those athletes and various franchise brands.
Excellent. And for the panel, how else are ways that we can create this disruption? Because one of the things that Matt and I talked about, we don't want this to be a one shot in the vein. We're past just talking. We need quantifiable results. And how do we create those quantifiable results? How do we create those accelerators? How do we take that individuals that wants to take that next step? At WSFS, we help a client through every part of the life cycle of the process. We had a client, Kathy Anderson, who was interviewed on the Open for Opportunity tour, and she's a new franchisee, succeeding, 134 members. Greg Wright, Club Pilates, 245 members. These are stories that are taking place. So open it up to everybody else. How else are we disrupting, breaking down the door so it no longer, the barrier exists?
I'll take it. I think first is you've got to own the problem, right? Mm-hmm. When we own the problem, you'll find a solution. Anything that you said, I'm going to do something about this, you'll find the ways and means to go do that. So I think individually and collectively as communities, we've got to own the problem. We've got to be the owners to how to fix that, right? Because once you do that, then naturally you're going to go start to look and find the partners that you need to go help, right? You're going to reach out to your chamber. You're going to reach out to organizations that you may not have looked at before. So I think first and foremost is owning that you have an opportunity to do something about the problem and go help fix it.
I think two parts to this is, one, let's not assume people are aware of these networks and opportunities. Regardless of how much we think we've talked about it, there's probably some pocket that's not aware of it. And also there's turns and churns and so on that we need to continue to make aware of these resources right through. The second part is I'm a huge fan of getting to the actual application of these things, right? Moving from the conceptual kind of conversation to say, let's look at a few examples of franchises that are looking to start. All right, what resources do they need that the African American Chamber of Commerce can come around them with? And then where do we start in terms of our capital process and assess what kind of capital can we bring around them? And let's start to make it happen. I think, and then showing that example and proving out that example is a great way to kind of bring that back to the broader audience and to scale, to say we know how this works efficiently across organizations, across partnerships, and how do we expedite that process and then scale it is a great way to kind of start moving the ball forward.
Yeah, I think we're at the precipice of sustained disruption. Before, you would have a CEO say something that was inflammatory and sensitive, so that company would then pivot and try to be responsive. 2 years ago, we had the murder of George Floyd, and everybody was trying to figure out how to be responsive. But Ben and I, the Vice President of Government Relations at IFI, were just at the African American Mayors Association conference this week in Washington, D.C. And what you were able to see is that this country, leadership is becoming blacker and blacker and younger. And now you have mayors who are saying, I want a Chick-fil-A franchise in my neighborhood. I want this franchise in my neighborhood. And I want the folks who live here, who pay the taxes here, to be able to be a part of this new opportunity and new growth. And to me, that leadership and that kind of bold declaration of who they want to be doing business in their cities, how they invite corporations and franchises in their cities, is what could lead to a sustained disruption where we're not having these flashpoints, but consistently corporations are have to go into the city like, that mayor's black, I better talk to her a certain way, I better have the right team, and I better be looking to bring in people into this club, right, that might have looked different than before, to make the stakeholders happy and to have that kind of sustained disruption. So we're very close to that, and I hope we can get over the edge.
I'm going to pop in 1 second on that. Excuse me. Nothing greater than a Jersey voice that's scratchy, so. Good Lord. So I know a thing or two about disruption. When I came into the franchising space like 8 years ago, I immediately got labeled as a disruptor. I don't know if that was meant as a compliment, but I took it as one, right? So here's the thing. We all have to be ambassadors of the concept of diversity. It's not the panel, it's every single individual. And that's why I said stay curious, ask questions, push things. Because the reality, in my opinion, diversity encompasses a whole gamut, and I always think of it as different thoughts. Sure, it can be, sexual preferences, color, all of religion, but really what it comes down to is diversity is not thinking all the same, thinking outside the box. Your thoughts are different than your thoughts that are different than mine that are different than hers. That's fabulous in franchising. Franchising welcomes entrepreneurs, different ways of thinking, stepping outside the box. It's a very exciting, but you have to continually be the ambassador. And I think what was said here is lack of knowledge, right? Lack of knowledge of if I want to go into business, will franchising support me? I don't know anything about business. I've never done that. There's nothing easy about franchising, but the model is simple, right? So once you have your franchise, once you're a franchisee, that support all comes, and of course it leads up to that. But I really implore all of you to be ambassadors of spreading the word, because once this panel steps down, the voice has to continue, right? Once we all get off these chairs, right? So I'm going to challenge you guys as much as you're challenging us. Let's get that word out that it is an open club for everyone.
So I know we're getting to.
I get a little passionate, just a little bit.
I love the passion, but that's what we need. We're all advocates, social entrepreneur advocates, and we show our passion, and their passion is what drives you. It's that fire in your belly, right? It allows you to go out here and make a difference. So before we get ready to conclude soon, I'm going to ask each one. I want you to just go straight down the line. When you first heard Open for Opportunity, what does it mean to you? And that's your final comment on what Open for Opportunity means to you.
I thought untapped opportunity, especially relevant to our clients. I think there's a lot more room here through this franchise model.
I was really thinking, parity, right? Opportunity for all, black or brown, right? This is an opportunity for every single one of us to be successful and, and create something special.
When I heard about Open for Opportunity, first thing I thought about was being able to share my stories, share the journey of franchising.
For me, it was access to all. Everyone's invited.
Yeah, I would say it's manifesting your idea, the ability to manifest your ideas, right? I think for hundreds of years, African Americans have not had the ability to manifest their ideas, potentially entrepreneurially. Reginald Lewis wrote, "Why do white guys get to have all the fun?" And that was only 30 years ago, right? So now we're at a position where we can manifest our ideas and make them real with partners like IFA. We can do that.
For me, it equates to my favorite hashtag that I use on social media, and that's hashtag changing lives.
For me, Open for Opportunity is all about the sustained campaign, right? It's not a one and done. You mentioned this, Richard. IFA and our foundation and our members have committed to this campaign as a minimum 3-year effort to raise awareness within these different communities and these pillars of the campaign. And, we're not going anywhere. We got a lot of stories to tell and a lot of partnerships to create and sustain. So that's what it's all about for me.
And for me, I go back to a Bible verse, Matthew 7. It talks about ask, seek, and knock, and the doors will be open for you. And this is the part of that knock. This is that knock to open those doors, open to opportunity. So I appreciate everybody's passion on this panel, your advocacy, the knowledge that you've brought to the table. And now we want to open up and see if there's any questions from the audience to this panel that can be asked that we can gain more insight from or that you need more clarity on. So thank you to you, and now we open the floor for questions.
I want to get your thoughts. There are a lot of different franchise concepts. How do you really slice through all these concepts to get to the one that has, good support from the franchisor? They have good marketing support, good margins. We've seen some franchises, we keep thinking about QSRs and quick service restaurants as being the best supported franchises, but the barriers or the entry points are, from the net worth standpoint, are pretty high to get into some of those concepts. So there are a lot of other concepts that probably have lower net worth to kind of identify a segment or industry we want to go into. How do we really, the UFOC used to be the document, right? Uniform Operating Circular. I'm not.
Franchise disclosure document.
Right, which kind of broke down the number of stores and support. And we're looking at 2,000 concepts. How do you really slice through and say, this is a good one, the margins are good, the franchisor is not going to have a whole lot of sales that push down my margins, and how do I really slice through all this to get to the right franchise that has the support that we're looking for?
I'm going to point that to Alicia Viscanti.
I already started moving forward. I was already out there, my friend.
Get that mic closer.
I was going to get an elbow if I said
I can't tell you what a wonderful question it is, because what happens is someone gets really excited. They jump in to look at franchising. There's like a whole universe of them, and then they get nervous and they step down. They step back, and it never happens, right? Because it's excitement, fear, excitement, fear. So what happens with that, I'm very fortunate at FranServe, that's exactly what we do. All of our consultants work with individuals who are looking to own a franchise. And it's a free service to all the individuals. They're all paid by the franchisors. And really what they do, you can work with someone like one of my consultants. You can do it yourself. It's hard yourself because you don't know everything. But really what you want to do is, yes, of course, numbers are always going to come in, right? Everybody wants to be successful in business. But you really also have to almost do the T-square. What am I looking for? What do I want in a business? You have to start with, how do you see yourself working every day? Do I want to be an absentee owner? Do I want to be enmeshed in the business? Right? Do I want a service business? Do I want a brick and mortar? And you see why it gets confusing and people step back from it. But those are the kind of questions that our consultants, we serve almost as a matchmaker, will ask individuals. Because too many times, being honest, it's like, oh, well, my cousin Susie says, this would be a good franchise, and the next thing you know, that's what you're looking at. But you know what? You don't want a whole lot of staff, and that's the senior care, and you've got to have, hundreds of employees, right? So sometimes what you think you want, when you start breaking it down of what's the daily responsibility or what does the model look like, It's not really what you want, right? So that's what comes into play. And you have to look at your heart, what kind of business model, how do you want to spend your time? How do you see yourself every day? You know, do you want to be out there doing sales? Do you not want to be doing that? Do you want to, you know, a pet industry? Do you, what is it that intrigues you? Go with your heart first, then you're always going to look at the numbers, because nobody wants anything that's not going to have good numbers. But the numbers are almost secondary, believe it or not, other than, let's say, you know, cost of entry, right? Because you can't, you know, if you don't have the money to buy $1 million home, why are you looking at them, right? Look at something that you can afford. And franchising can go way up, as we know. But we have brands in our franchising that you can come in at like 50 grand or less. So it's not that everything has to be $1 zillion, right? There's a lot of other business models that are very, very affordable. So, you know, don't think franchising equals $, right? But ask questions, and honestly, that's why we're in business, to put that together. Right?
Yeah, it's all about due diligence and then ultimately relationships and fit, right? So talking to existing franchisees, I think, is within the systems that you may, as you get further down the line, is incredibly important.
The validation.
That's
That's called
from
validation.
the people that will be your peers within that system, and then the culture, right? I mean, increasingly culture, not just for the workforce, but for franchisees. You know, is this company doing things, you know, within all of their system and their leadership that, you know, I want to be a part of? I think that's another kind of intangible aspect, increasingly important in all types of business, but particularly in franchises.
And the last thing I'll say about it, really, is don't forget, when you're looking at a franchise, they're looking at you. Okay, it's not just because you have the money and you want that, you just write the check and you're an automatic franchisee. Because it's a commitment, right? They're going to invest in you, spend time on you. They're going to want, you know, success from you. So remember that, right? You're evaluating them. They're evaluating you. It is almost a marriage in a way, right? We get you guys to date, and then you decide if you're going to get married, right? That's the concept of it, right? So just remember, it's a two-way street, and then you have better success.
I'll just add, you know, we look at different franchise concepts just in, you know, in terms of expanding our business, and you know, we've developed a scorecard internally. And to Matt's point, right, on there is what are they doing from a diversity standpoint, right? Management team, right? A host of different criteria to really see if, you know, not only if, you know, we think, you know, they're a good fit, are we a good fit for them, and are they a good fit for us? So I think that's truly important too. What are your values? What are things you think are important? And do those franchisors match that or meet those criteria?
A company that does a really good job at helping with that is J3. I've been working with them for a bit, and they do an awesome job to kind of really help you understand what's your goals, what do you want to really do, what do you want to accomplish. And for those who are looking for a franchise, please look at the Self-Esteem Brands, one of the best there. So, because I'm one of the franchisees, so definitely would love to see more people be a part of that.
Good morning, everyone. I have a question for you and for anyone who wants to take this. So I work at Drexel University. I get the opportunity to see some of the most brilliant minds at work. I'm really, really interested in what you or your companies or organizations are doing to introduce the concept of entrepreneurship or franchising to the next generation. How early do you start? Do you start in middle school? Are you going to middle schools or high schools? If we're talking about breaking down barriers and providing access, I think that has to start early. So I'm just really interested in knowing what you all do to introduce that concept early to young people.
I could take it, and then if others want to jump in from their personal experience, from the International Franchise Association's perspective, we have formed direct partnerships with a number of academic institutions to get our members on campus as part of either formally or more just informally raising awareness within business schools, undergraduate programs, colleges of entrepreneurship about, you know, back to my whole point of, you know, people can't be it unless they can see it. So getting franchisees at our last roadshow stop, we were at Georgia State University, one of the largest predominantly African-American schools in the country, doing a panel similar to this with a number of franchisees and franchisors, highlighting the opportunities within the business model. We've also partnered within specifically the HBCU community with Congresswoman Alma Adams to encourage more of our members to join the HBCU Partnership Challenge, which is making a commitment through financial support as well as raising awareness about opportunities within different sectors of the economy, and for us specifically franchising. So I think we have over 20 brands now that have joined that program with her, who's the chair of the HBCU caucus on Capitol Hill. So one of the biggest challenges that our members face is just awareness of the model. So this is just another door that we're going through and want to go in together and build partnerships. So we are open for those types of opportunities, so to speak, with really anybody that wants to have us.
Yeah, and I do speaking at high school level. Nothing against college level, but I jump in at the high school level a lot because not every kid wants to go to college, or that's not necessarily the direction they want to go. And while that's quite young, why not, right? You got to plant the idea sometimes. And we've actually seen sometimes parents, the kid goes home and they're all excited, whatever, and the parents will come in as franchise owners and then bring the kid into the family. And you can't ask for anything more rewarding than that from me standing up on career day or something and doing a little spiel. So, you said, when do you start? I don't know, when they come out of the womb is really like my philosophy, but I do more high school than I do other levels.
That's a great question, Denise. And I think, from my concept, I would think you would start when you do some to work, right? So you'd say, you could work for one of these franchises, but what, you can't own one? So I think if we're going to say, go to work at 15 or 16 and work for McDonald's or one of these other franchises, there should also be a parallel track that says, yeah, work for them now, but when you're ready, get one, right? And I think that would be a really, really incredible way to kind of reshape that paradigm. And I think there's a lot that institutions of higher education like Drexel can do to say, this is how we care about our students. Don't just come on our campus and make a ton of money from our students because they want to not spend the meal plan, right? But you come in here and make really inextricable partnerships that can provide new opportunities for our students.
At the Enterprise Center, we've kind of had various iterations of this. I think many years ago we did have more of a formal youth-oriented program. Actually, some of our entrepreneurs today talk about their stories from then. We've also had kind of, from what I've seen, summer school interns to get them exposure. We actually went through budgets, just like budgeting process, from the concept of saying this is what we do with our businesses, we work with them, but we kind of applied it on a personal level for them so that they kind of can have a tangible example of something that's relevant to them, but saying it correlates to, on a larger scale, with businesses, they have to do the same thing. And actually, we are working with Drexel and evaluating co-op opportunities. And I think our capital team is actually actively looking at ways to bring on some talent from Drexel. So those are just some examples. I think there's probably a lot more ways we can go deeper with that. But yeah, I think the Drexel co-op structure could be really relevant as well.
And at WSFS Bank, we do the focus through our foundation through financial literacy. So we go into a lot of the high school, college, universities, and we speak from a financial literacy standpoint because normally that's the foundation to better understand how to manage your finances, what does it look like to get lending. So when you give them that foundation of financial literacy and they walk in and somebody begins to talk about entrepreneurship and what that looks like, you kind of plant that seed. So we also support from that standpoint as well.
Also, from the franchisee perspective, we internally for us, we really believe in lifting as we climb. So we're actually launching an initiative called Our Slice, a play on our slice of the pie, to really talk to Black and brown communities about the importance of franchising and how to access it, and using, not waiting until we meet, get to ultimate success and then, turn around and pull people up. But we're doing it as we're building our business to really inform, educate, and provide access to the space.
All right.
Awesome. What actually kind of what we're working on here out of Delaware is creating an incubator program from my gym to work with our local HBCU and our local high school. So putting a program together that allows students and kids to understand here's how you get access, but then giving them an opportunity to see the real world experience, come in, do the work, see what's going on, and then help them create a pathway to ownership, management, or development.
Excellent. So that is, we got time for one more question, and after that, that'll be our last question before we wrap up and move into the next roundtable. Okay. All right.
Thank you. Quick question for the panel. As a new business concept owner, I just started my first business. I'm just trying to understand when should be a good time to start thinking about franchising. And going.
Right now.
I agree with you, but just to make sure that all your ducks are in order and things like that, you want to make sure that you have the best concept in order for other people to want to come in and buy into it. So I just wanted to know when's a good time. And I'm glad you said something, because you made a statement. Nothing is easy about franchising, but it's easy. Can you go into that a little bit further for me?
When I said right now, and I mean that, right? Because if you want a goal, right, you have to start thinking about it, right from the moment you wake up, right? So great that you're asking that question and you got your eyes on that. So that's why I wasn't kidding when I said right now. What I said about franchising was no business is easy. Franchising is simple, right? Because it's a simple model. It's a blueprint from what the brand will kind of, lay out how to do it. Now, the thing you'll hear over and over again in franchising, follow the system, right? Follows the system. There's never a guarantee of success, right? I mean, because you could not get out of bed, right? It's on you too. It's your business. But they spent a lot of money for their marketing, the brand's identity, their logo, their operating system. Follow the system. That's the key to success in franchising. So when you're talking about, business owner and you're looking at it for franchising, start following, laying your ducks in a row to be able to be duplicatable. That's the key in franchising.
Or even start with multiple locations, show profitability in terms of the corporate-owned locations in multiple areas or before you begin the franchising process. I think that's a really key, as well as hiring somebody that knows franchise law to help you develop your franchise disclosure documents and those materials that you need to have in order to ultimately work with prospective franchisees to buy into your system.
And can you just give the website for the IFA? Because the IFA has tremendous resources. Like they would have people when you were ready, right? We have, suppliers and people. Can you just give the website
Yeah, so
for the
we're
IFA?
franchise.org is our association website. And there's a whole host of supplier businesses that help, new concepts that want to determine, are we franchisable, become successful and make the right relationships. And mentorship, Alicia talks about the franchise fam. It really is a family of mentorships, not just people who become prospective franchisees, but people who want to become, new franchisors, and learning from, other founders of concepts who have done this and grown and scaled these brands and doing it in a successful and sustainable way where you're profitable and your franchisees are profitable. That's the dream right there.
And I do have to cut from that standpoint because we have another panel coming up. So this is great. We could talk all day about this, but thank you. Round of applause for our panel.
Thank you.
And we'll start the second round in a few minutes, getting some refreshments, and thank you all. Table number 2 here. More information to provide to you. I'm going to pass it over to CEO Matt Holler to talk about Open for Opportunity and why we're here.
Great, thanks, Richard. So again, Matt Haller, President and CEO of the International Franchise Association. We're thrilled to have the second part of our panel this morning as part of our roadshow stop here in the great city of Philadelphia. As I mentioned on the last panel, Open for Opportunity is all about raising awareness of the value of the franchise business model, telling stories and marrying it with data in 4 key pillars. And for this panel, I think we're going to focus, again, a little bit more on the diversity issues, but also on the veterans issues and how franchising does very well for our returning servicemen and women from the military, as well as what we do in local communities and with the workforce. So with that, Richard, I think you're going to introduce the panel.
Yes, I'm going to introduce the panel, but just let you know, I'm, again, Richard Snow, also a host here today. I'm the Vice President for the SBA National Franchise Program at WSFS Bank. We've been in existence serving the community since 1832, and we're excited and passionate about franchising. I'm also the chair for the Black Franchise Leadership Council, where we focus on the pillars of access to capital, education and awareness, community, and marketing for that space. So we want to engage more Black and brown entrepreneurs to come into this space to create community and generational wealth change within that community through the vehicle of franchising. And now I have the esteemed pleasure of introducing my panel. So we have the Honorable Mayor James Kinney, Mayor of Philadelphia. We have Patrick Murphy, former U.S. Representative. We have Ed Samani, CEO of FranSafe. We have Dr. Ellen Bryant Brown, franchisee of Quality Inn Hotel. And we have Anuj Gupta, Chief of Staff for Rep. Dwight Evans. So first, we have to turn it over to Mayor Kinney just to speak to why is franchising important to the city of Philadelphia and how has it truly impacted this economy?
Well, I won't speak specifically to the franchising, but what I will speak to is intentionality. When I was on the board of Independence Blue Cross for about 23 years, and I served on the Minority Contracting and Hiring Committee. And sometimes people think those committees are just like feel-good committees and we're doing the right thing and it's wonderful socially to do that kind of work. But what I learned at Independence Blue Cross was this is in the best interest of the company. The minority contracting and hiring and expanding the pie is important for the company because as these businesses grow, they become members of your healthcare company, your healthcare insurance company. As these businesses have more capacity, they become stronger in the community. So when I left Independence Blue Cross in 2015 and left City Council and ran for mayor, I took that experience with me to understand that unless you're intentional and unless you're specifically charging your folks with expanding the pie to everyone in the community, then it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because it's the right thing to do. It's not going to happen because, you know, it's a feel-good thing. It's going to happen because you instruct your employees, your department heads, your procurement people, your contracting people to do this specifically. And similar to what Blue Cross's mission was to grow their membership. The importance of this for our city is to grow the tax base, is to grow the employment base, is to grow wealth, is to allow wealth to be spread around in the community, allow people to earn that wealth. So you have to take a look at all of the obstacles that are in the way of Black and brown business doing business with the city or doing business with the government in general. And then we wound up in the midst of COVID, in the midst of the George Floyd murder, in the midst of civil unrest, and we wound up being forced to examine not only how we contract and deal with business, but how we deal with everything, how we deal with policing, how we deal with health. I mean, if you look at the health ramifications of pandemic, it devastated Black and brown communities much more than it did non-Black and brown communities. Dr. Stanford, when I first met her, had the opportunity to understand what her mission was with the Black Doctors Consortium and the work that they did to get people tested, vaccinated. So all of these systemic racist issues were just magnified during this whole period of time. And even myself, who I thought was pretty progressive and, very forward-thinking, realized that I had my own limitations when it came to understanding how all of these things were affecting people, black and brown folks in our communities. We're struggling now with the gun, and it's mostly young black men shooting young black men because instead of getting up in the morning and having a viable place to go to work, a dignified, level of work that makes them feel good about what they're doing, who they are, they're mired in this poverty and mired in this culture of violence. And the way out of it is not throwing them in jail. The way out of it is getting them to understand that the training they need, the education they need, is what it is they have to have in order to move forward safely and productively. So everything we do, we try to do in our government, is to look through a racial equity lens as to how we're approaching this, how we're approaching who we hire, who we promote, who we contract with, and to make sure that when we're not perfect, and part of it institutionally is getting department heads and other people to understand that we haven't been doing things the right way. I mean, they have to face themselves sometimes. So we have constant meetings, regular meetings with department heads about the number of people they hire, who they're hiring, who they're promoting. And I think sometimes it just doesn't get through to them yet what it is they need to do when they're making these decisions about the economy of our city, the economy of our country. Because I believe, as Independence Blue Cross taught me, is that if the company does better because we expand the pie and we expand the reach, the city does better, the country does better if we do the same thing on a governmental level. So whether it's franchising, whether it's directly contracting with minority business with the city, or who we hire and who we promote, all makes a difference in the future of our city. Because the more people who are doing well in all of our neighborhoods, the more houses get bought, the more houses get restored, the more kids get raised, the more kids get educated, and the better off we all are. And I think these kinds of events are important because it expands, it gives information to people as to what they need to do to get in the right line, to get in the right space, to make a success of their lives and their businesses.
Thank you. Matt.
Are we going to start the Q&A?
Yes.
Okay, great. So one of the things that we're trying to do with Open for Opportunity is raise awareness and build relationships, right? We said on the last panel that often, particularly with communities that are disadvantaged or underrepresented in, particularly business ownership in our context, is you can't be it unless you can see it. And so part of Open for Opportunity is storytelling and raising awareness, but also building partnerships with local officials and other community organizations around the 4 pillars of our campaign. But we're not perfect. We want to learn how to do that in a more productive and intentional way. So this is really for the entire panel. What are more things that, as a trade association with over 1,100 brands and hundreds of supplier companies, what are things that we need to be doing, particularly within the community that you are focused in, to continue to raise awareness of the franchise business model and the challenges that your community may face in that regard?
Or you got to go first because you're the boss.
All right, so one of the things that we can do is mentor people. Go into the community. Someone is in the community, they want to have a franchise, or they want to be a business owner. They don't know how to do it. We have to educate our community. We have to mentor our community. When I start my franchise business as a hotel owner, no one was there to mentor me. And I have to do a lot of research. Choice have a way that they give you how you can go online and get yourself educated. But for some of the community, nobody in their family have ever been a business owner. So what they want to do, they want somebody who is black or brown to step up and said, listen, I am able, I do it, you can do it too, and I'm able to mentor you. So I believe that we need to have more panels like these, and we need to go back into the community, give back to our community by mentoring the people and educating the people.
Matt, can I just jump in? Because I agree with Dr. Bryant Brown. It is about mentorship. And, I own a venture capital firm. We call it Mentor Capital. We invest $100,000, $250,000 to entrepreneurs. And why is that important? Because as Matt said, we have to build these relationships. We have to make sure that we, build this to grow the pie. And as Mayor Kenny said, you have to be intentional about this. When Matt says, as the head of the IFA, we have to tell our stories, we have a great story in Philadelphia. We have a great story in Philadelphia when it comes to veterans. People don't know veterans, 42% of veterans are people of color. We're 1% of this population that served the longest wars in American history. We want to come back, we want to get to work, we want to own our own business. And that's a foundation that helped build this country. What's one of the largest private employers here in Philadelphia? Comcast. It was started by a veteran. We call it vetrepreneurs. Ralph Roberts, World War II era Navy veteran. What's the largest retailer in America? Walmart, started by Sam Walton, Army veteran. FedEx, Enterprise Car Rental. So it's like Dr. Bryant Brown said, it's about mentorship. And so that's why it's great with IFA, when we talk about open for opportunity, when you have a franchise, you don't have to start from scratch. You already have PR campaigns, you already have the marketing dollars behind a brand that's out there, and you just got to run your own shop. So I would say that's a storytelling that we need to get into. That's a mentorship that we need to get into. And Mayor Kenny's been on that. And then when I talk about the Heritage of Philadelphia, it's not just on the side of veteran-owned and vetrepreneurs, but it's also the Army, the Navy, and the Marine Corps were all founded in the city of Philadelphia. So, when we tell those stories, and Matt, I was talking to your team, when we have the second Saturday in December, and it's America's game, it's the third most watched football game in the country. It's called the Army-Navy game here in Philadelphia this December. Mayor Kenny's always there on the Friday night. He's there at the game. But, telling these stories and incorporating, our story. And more importantly, the opportunity that's out there. Because half those veterans of World War II came back and started their own small business and built Nike and Comcast and Walmart. But my generation of Iraq, Afghanistan, it's less than 5% that start their own small business. Now, in the franchise market, 14% of franchises are owned by veteran-owned businesses, even though we're about 6% of the population. But there's a lot more when we talk about access to capital that we got to do. And part of that is the mentorship, making sure we put them in the right place. I yield my time.
Well, you took half my answer, but that's great. So mentorship, training, education, I think, the more education we can put out there as far as, free programming in local communities about entrepreneurship and the power of franchising using, proven systems. Also, providing these financial incentives. I'm involved in some franchise brands, and in our franchise brands, we waive the franchise fees for veterans. Some franchises, they give a discount, we waive them. And I think same for minorities. I think we need to give financial incentives on top of education to get minorities more active in franchising. And the reason for that is a lot of times it's that financial barrier that's holding them back. And that's why I think WSFS and groups like that are important, to give them access to capital, because we want that brain power, because, all boats rise, right? When everybody rises together. So we want more people rowing in the same direction, rising together. Thank you.
I think the last panelist's points about mentorship feed into a larger issue here. And this is specific to Greater Philadelphia. We do not create and promote a culture of entrepreneurship in this region. We spend a lot of time, a lot of effort preparing people to enter the workforce. We focus on job readiness, and that's important. We need a trained workforce. But we need to start building a culture from an early age where young people understand that they don't just have to go get a job. If they have a dream, they can take that into their own hands and realize it themselves. And franchising is a pathway towards that. But we have to build support structures around it. Got to start in our school system, and when they have advanced beyond primary school or secondary school, there is a system of supports throughout local government, throughout state government, throughout the nonprofit sector, and the private sector, all working together. I mean, we have so many firsts in this city that have never materialized in wealth creation. The first computer was invented here in Philadelphia. The wealth creation around that's all on the West Coast because we don't have that culture of entrepreneurship. And so that's an ecosystem that really has to be developed and supported and grown, and franchising is an important component of it. My first paid job when I was 14 years old was with one of the first black McDonald's franchisees here in Greater Philadelphia, Craig Welburn. He and his wife owned 12 McDonald's in the city and outside the city. And my best friend was his son, and he and I would go to work every day in their Norristown store, sometimes come to the 52nd Street store. Now, 30 years later, 40 years later, whatever it is, the son, all three siblings, their spouses, they have all inherited those stores. They have multiplied from 12 in Greater Philadelphia to nearly 40 in the greater DC area. And guess what? Their kids are now going to inherit those businesses and continue to grow it. That is serious wealth creation. It's amazing.
I think those are great segues, because when you talk about a system and what you have put together here in Philadelphia, and then we're talking about franchising, and franchising is all about taking a model and replicating that model. How can we replicate your action steps, your items, the action items that you're currently doing and the successes you're seeing? How can we replicate that throughout the city of Philadelphia to increase that awareness, to increase that engagement in entrepreneurship?
Mentorship is definitely part of it, but access to cheap capital, not market rate, and lowering the risk threshold. So I used to run the Reading Terminal Market, and we created a program there where it was a low barrier to entry pathway for entrepreneurs with new concepts to come in and try the market. Literally, we took 100-year-old luggage carts from the Reading Railroad. We set them up in a bazaar-like space, and we said to entrepreneurs, you can come be a Reading Terminal Market business. All you have to do is pay $50 a day. You don't have to sign a long-term lease. You can do it 1 day a week. You can do it 7 days a week. Whatever fits where you are in your business startup, as long as you've got a business activity license from the City of Philadelphia, an insurance policy, and a product we're interested in, you're in business, in the Reading Terminal. From that, we increased the number of black-owned businesses at the Reading Terminal by 300%. We brought in the first Latino-owned businesses in the market's 125-year history, brought in the first Muslim-owned businesses. Why? Because we eliminated the risk profile. So if your concept didn't do well, all you were out was the $50 a day and your time. Okay? You didn't have to mortgage your house. You didn't have to commit to a long-term lease, get into year 2 and realize this wasn't working. So the systems that we create, I believe, it's access to below market capital, and it's figuring out ways to mitigate the risk profile of budding entrepreneurs.
Excellent. And I wanted to come to you because you have a unique perspective from the Zor standpoint and now through franchisee, where you're introducing brand opportunity and entrepreneurs to the brands, and you're bringing the world together, suppliers. Can you speak to how you're cultivating that system? And in your mind, what does the future of franchising look like?
I think, look, I mean, I've been a franchisor, franchisee, and an entrepreneur all my life. I can tell you, I think Amazon and Uber are defining what franchising will look like in the future. One of my partners, he's built many big companies, and he said to me when Amazon was putting their trucks out, he said, and we were talking about FranSave and franchising, he said, that's the future franchise model. You have to make it affordable and accessible, what he was saying, okay? put people in business for themselves, spread entrepreneurship, but don't make it $100,000 or $200,000. Make it under $25,000, okay? Take that risk off the table where they don't have to put their houses or their 401ks on the line. And then, you know, a lot of people will jump into that, offer financing for those trucks. I mean, look what Amazon and Uber is literally a franchise, Lyft, same thing. I mean, you pay your royalty, maybe you pay a higher royalty, but they make it easy to get in. They put an irresistible offer in the marketplace for something that's a need, and I think that's where the future of franchising is going, at least for brands that are going to become global. Because the more affordable you can make it, the more people will buy. And you know, I've seen it from, we represent hundreds of brands and we put entrepreneurs in business, but I think that is the future. Affordable, easy to buy.
Yeah, I think that one of the things with this campaign that we've been trying to highlight is exactly that, Ed, is you know, the diversity of business concepts that exist in the franchise sector. I was saying to the mayor out front, people tend to think about franchising, you know, as McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts, and yes, those are incredible, powerful brands, long-sustained, iconic, but there are a wealth of opportunities just in the franchise sector today beyond just, you know, restaurants and hospitality. And particularly for, I want to bring the kind of the veterans piece back into this conversation. The discounts are important for veterans who do face disproportionate challenges accessing capital and serving our country overseas. But franchising is a business model that is all about following a system and a structure and a playbook, and that's something that we found, I think, speaks to the stats, Congressman Murphy, you were talking about, in terms of 14+% of franchises owned by veterans, which is much higher than the broader small business community. So our members have programs. We have a Vet Fran program that has been around for over 30 years that offers discounts or waives franchise fees. Can you just speak, and thank you, by the way, for your service, not only in the military, but also in Washington, and now such a leader on these issues. Can you speak a little bit more to that area and more things that could be done and the challenges that the veteran community faces?
Yeah, I mean, every year, we've asked less than 1% of the country to serve in the longest wars in American history, Iraq, Afghanistan. And every year, we recruit about 250,000 of these young Americans to come in, and about 250,000 leave every year. They leave active service. So they want opportunity. They went and did great things on behalf of our nation, but they want opportunity. So they're not going to come back and be the best marketers about selling something, whether it's hotel rooms or hamburgers or, you know, chicken sandwiches. But what they do have is a work ethic and a risk-taking ability that they want to get there. They want to lead teams. They have all those soft skills, but they want to get after it. And so I think part of it is you have to be intentional. I love the fact, Matt, that IFA, you know, when you talk about the 4 pillars, it's not 4 separate pillars. I mean, yeah, you look at franchises, yeah, 30% are owned by people of color, 14% are owned by veterans. There's a lot of overlap there because, as I mentioned earlier, 42% of veterans are people of color. But it's also about community, and it's about the workforce. So you have to give them opportunities. You know, for a guy like me, yeah, I mean, I could sit here, you hear me earlier. I own a venture capital company. I've invested $21 million in small businesses, right? I'm a kid that was born in Northeast Philadelphia in a row house. You know, my dad was a cop, my mom was a secretary. I went to community college like your boss, you know, and they do a great job at Community College Philadelphia, showing Dwight Evans, being the former chair of appropriations in the state, now a U.S. member of Congress, doing great things. But we just got to tell those stories and make it easier, because when you tell those stories, people can believe, oh yeah, that's what I want to do. And it's not going to be overnight. It's going to be day to day, but you got to give them those opportunities. And that's what I'm most excited about what IFA is doing, what the mayor's doing, and hopefully what we can do together.
Just let me, I'm not a business person, and I'm not an expert on franchising, and, you know, I've never run a business. But the one thing that I know for sure is that if I could ask the Chamber of Commerce to do one thing, it would be to fully expand as much as possible the mentorship opportunities that our young people could be exposed to. If you are in an environment with positive people who are doing positive things, and you can go and have a consistent experience every day as an intern, as a a lower level employee, but be around people who are giving you the right direction, it would save our kids, because there's no direction on the corner. No, there's no direction, hanging out every day. There's no direction getting out of bed at 11 o'clock in the morning and not doing anything the rest of the day. If there was some place for that young person, male, female, whatever ethnic background they are, whatever racial background they are, to be able to have the contact of people who are doing positive, productive things and can give them direction. I think a lot of times when I talk to young people, some who I mentor myself, they just don't have direction. They don't have someone in their lives that can give them that positive reinforcement and that positive direction and the advice that they need when they're confused about something. So I have a young man that I mentor out in West Philly who will just call me every now and then and say, I'm dealing with this. What do you think? Should I do that? Should I go this direction? Should I? Yeah, and we have a conversation. But there's somebody there to kind of anchor their existence. And if it can't be done by family members, by parents or by grandparents, then that we need as a business community to be that anchor for them, to have them have the opportunity to have a network of support that will allow them to figure out what it is they really want to do with their lives and what they need to do, what training they need, what schooling they need, those kinds of things. When you're out there on your own, I mean, it's tough. It's tough. And I think that we would expand wealth, we would expand franchise, we expand the business community, we would reduce all the negative aspects of our society if the larger Chamber of Commerce, the African American Chamber of Commerce, the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Asian Chamber of Commerce would embrace internship and mentorship. I think it would make a huge difference to our entire society.
But to Mayor's Placatis, I'm sorry, but because to your point about giving them an opportunity to tell that story, I mean, the mayor, listen, the mayor, when he was a councilman, started the first veterans office in the city of Philadelphia. We didn't have one before you started that. But some of our great leaders that are in those schools every day, like I'm a mentor, Samaj Dukes is my mentee, right? Because I'm a Big Brothers Big Sisters. Now, Big Brothers Big Sisters in Philadelphia, in the Philadelphia region and South Jersey is led by Marcus Allen. Marcus Allen is a former professional basketball player. He's one of the great black leaders in our region and the country, one of the largest Big Brothers Big Sisters program. But part of that is you tell the story of Marcus, Marcus Allen, I'm not talking about the football player from the Raiders, okay? I know the draft was last night, but he's a great leader now. But can you say, hey, IFA, hey, Marcus, can we get in there and talk to these young people, these young kids in the city of Philadelphia and tell them about what franchise is and tell them what entrepreneurship is and say, hey, in 10 years, do you want to run a business and give them those opportunities and have these programs through, if it's community college or just do a mentorship program or internship program, tie in the chamber and stuff like that. That's the type of synergy that we need that I think would really let this thing grow.
No, I'm thinking I wanted to jump in because Mayor Kenny said two key words, mentorship and an anchor.
Yeah.
And Dr. Brown, I want to come back to you because you're the franchisee sitting at the table. Who was your mentor? How did you continue to mentor the next generation? And what was your anchor when you took your path into franchising?
Well, for me, I didn't have a mentor. I mentor myself. But for me, when I'm doing interview with people, I like to go into the community, let the community know what we're doing, who we're looking for. And if they need a job, come to me. I will mentor you. I will show you how to do it. If you don't want to work for us, then we can show you how to go to the next path. And that's what I want to do for the community. I want to go back into the black and brown community and show these people that, hey, if I can do it, you can do it too.
And what does Quality Inn do to support you from a franchisor brand? How do they support you with that initiative of mentorship?
Quality Inn they have a lot of, you can go online and do a lot of work from their website. For me, I take my time to learn more about the business. I take my time to study the business so I can give back. Because if I don't know the business, I can't mentor someone. So I have to take my time to go online to see what they have, and they have a lot to offer. They offer a lot, like for example, from cleaning a room, they offer you certification from cleaning a room to managing your staff. So, and that's what I learned, and that's what I want to give back to people.
So the next piece of mentorship, I think it's consistent mentorship. So for the Open for Opportunity Roadshow, we're going around from state to state, having this conversation, facilitating, creating a synergy. But we don't want it to be a one shot in the vein. This has to be consistent. So how can we at the IFA partner with your constituents, your leaders within your community? What do they need from us to create that sustainability? I think we talked about in the last panel, sustained disruption. We want to create sustained disruption. So how can we create that partnership with your constituents?
We got to be consistent. Consistency is what we're looking for. We can't just do it today and tomorrow we say we're not doing it. So one of the things that we have to do to keep it going is being consistent.
I think one of the things that would be helpful, if it's possible, is to get into the high schools and create these kind of entrepreneur/business club kind of activities where young people who may have an eye or an idea to be in business themselves would have a place to go, similar to the debate club or the chess club or the Spanish club, that they would have a kind of a business club to be able to hash out their ideas, interact with folks like all of you, and try to chart a course for themselves, and then begin to grow the network of connection. This is, Sonny Hill told me one time years ago, life is about relationships. Right. It's about your relationships, the people that you've met, the people you stay friendly with, and the people you can go to and depend on for advice, for help, for guidance. And I think that if we were I would say I would start with the public high schools, because I think that's where the most need is. And even if it's a group of 8 or 10 young people that meet, weekly or bi-monthly, I think that would be a huge benefit to all of them.
I've made a mental note because that is absolutely amazing. I can see small little IFA groups in the local high schools, and really speaking to them, because I think that's where it starts. One of the items at WSFS, we focus on financial literacy, because we see that to be just the foundational education of understanding, having financial awareness and understanding how to balance a budget or handle expenses leads into that idea of, man, I could be an entrepreneur, and working through and exposing that child to the opportunity. So I think that is great, and it is in the back of my mind right now. Any other input?
Well, one thing I'd say to that, and I say this with the realization and recognition that there is an incredible array and diversity of franchising opportunities, and they require different skill sets. But I do know enough to say that they don't all require a graduate degree. Right? They don't all require a master's degree, not even necessarily a college degree. And it is an entry point to wealth creation that you can say to young people, there is another path. You don't want to go to college, you don't want to go to graduate school, that's okay. You still have a path towards upward economic mobility. And I think franchises of different types can offer those pathways. And again, to go into my point about creating that culture, starting in the schools, starting when they're young, giving them the insight that this is a possibility, that's how we build that culture of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, Anuj, I think it's a great point, and one that we like to highlight at the association. I mean, literally the university is the franchise system, right? So we don't fit neatly into like the entrepreneurship category. We don't fit neatly into like an apprenticeship category. We are our own sort of unique thing, but what other type of business ownership opportunity, will they train you and ensure that you have shared success, right? I mean, the slogan is you go into business for yourself, but not by yourself. And not only is the brand investing in your success, but you have, on a small brand, dozens, and a large brand, you could have thousands of other franchisees, like in Dr. Brown's scenario, who are running literally the exact same business and may have been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years and want to see you succeed. Because the other cool thing about franchising is franchisees don't want to see their other franchisees falling down, right? It's all about consistency and ensuring that consistency so that that McDonald's in Washington, D.C., looks and feels the same as that McDonald's here in Philadelphia. That's on the franchisee to ensure that that brand standard, that system is maintained, and franchisees want to pick their other franchisees up, and brands want to work to ensure their franchisees, have the resources and tools to be successful.
Yeah, can I just add something really quick? Because in the military, we have this saying, it's amateurs talk strategy, experts talk logistics, right? And so logistics, I'm a numbers guy, so the following numbers. So in Philadelphia, it's about 10,000 employees that work for franchises, right? So when the mayor talks about tax base, that's incredibly important. And in the numbers itself, it's about $700 million of the Philadelphia GDP from franchises, just in the city brotherly love. But on the logistics, we talk about the strategy, we had to go to the schools, et cetera, but how do you do that logistically? For WSFS, because you all do a great job and access to capital, et cetera, but you have two great, literally franchisees right here, franchise owners, right? I invest in them, but they run it. Tell their stories. Say, hey, listen, this year I'm going to do 20 grand, and I'll do it for free for you. I'll get a production crew. We'll tell these two other stories that IFA pays from the city of Philadelphia, and we show those videos in those schools. You talk to them, and you do the programs, and then those kids are on their phones watching it, because that's where they're watching. They're not watching TV at home. They're watching their phones. You put it out there. And that's the way that change their culture. That's the way to get people, and whether or not they choose franchisees to be a franchisor or an entrepreneur, or whatever, but at least they know what options are out there. That's incredibly important. Give them hope. Give them the opportunity. Say, hey, I might go do that.
And I'm going to give you how that plays in motion. So I'm going to ask Greg Wright just to stand up. Greg is one of our clients at WSFS Bank. He's a Club Pilates franchisee, first generation franchisee. He brought his daughter in, who's a graduate of University of Maryland, to teach her the generational wealth. He started 3 months in, 245 members. You're now you're celebrating your year anniversary right now, which we featured your story on Fox. And we've been telling the story. We've been walking this path with him the whole time. He's now looking at unit number 2. That's generational wealth in motion. And I wanted to give him his roses, because a lot of times we don't give those roses out in the most. So we don't tell those stories. So those are the stories that we tell. That's what we believe as WSFS. That's what we talk about. Candace Caruso, she's the Chief Retail Lending Officer for WSFS Bank. She always talks to us about pivoting, latitude, being agile. That's what a business needs in telling those stories. So before we conclude, because it's close to that time, I asked the same question of the last panel, and I'm going to ask the question of you. When you heard about Open for Opportunity, what did it mean to you? And I'm going to go down the line, and I want you to speak to what does Open for Opportunity mean to you?
Can we start with me?
Yes, absolutely. Get a question.
Open for Opportunity would be the tagline that I would use to create that culture of entrepreneurship in Philadelphia that I was speaking about. That's what we should be known for. You want to be an entrepreneur? You want to open a franchise? Philadelphia is the place to come. You can get capital, you can get mentorship, you can get support, and you're going to be encouraged through every step.
I think Open for Opportunity, Philadelphia, we have the city of brotherly love, right? And I think Open for Opportunity means two things to me. One, it means that the city, is a great place to do business and to start a business and, to grow your dream. Two, we are all one. We are, as one unit, going to rise together. We need to accept that, and we need to let people that are underserved, become inclusive to that and provide them incentives so that everybody wins in the city of Philadelphia.
Open opportunity to me means telling the story of my brother and sister veterans. because when I'm out there and I see the commercials and it's like, you know, for $19 you get to help these poor veterans and they're all poor and they're all broken, and it's not the case. And yes, we have an ethic in the military, leave no one behind, and we can't leave anyone behind. But there's a lot of positive stories out there. 14% of franchise owners are veterans. That's an important story to tell. So for me, when you say open for opportunity, it's telling their stories and getting after it and letting my brothers and sisters know the opportunities that they can go and do if they care enough to do it. If they want to do it, it's there for them if they want to grab it. And we're there to help. And that's why we're on this panel today.
Open for opportunity to me is share knowledge. It's that someone is sharing their knowledge. We're not just holding it for ourselves, but we're here to share our knowledge with others. And it is true that the scripture said, my people will be destroyed because of lack of knowledge. So I'm thanking God for open for opportunity because we get to share our knowledge with others.
Open for opportunity for me means to do your best to ignore the negative. We live in a negative world, whether it's social media, whether it's network news, whether it's just people's being fed up with everything. Ignore the negative. Stop thinking about the negative. I do it myself. I have to fight myself to not look at the negative. Look at the positive, look at what the possibilities are, and then go focus on those possibilities, focus on the positivity, leave the negativity behind, and go do your thing.
Open for opportunity means, for me, franchising is a force for good, and we have to control that narrative and tell that story, and that's what this campaign is all about. So I want to thank each and every one of you for being part of us helping tell that story and working with you and your constituencies in your communities or networks to help raise awareness of the incredible opportunities that exist. It's the greatest democratic wealth creation tool that has ever been invented. It's a truly American invention. There's a lot of great Philadelphia grown brands, and all of our members are open for opportunity themselves and want to continue to grow and find people in these pillars to help them grow their brands and be successful for themselves.
And Matt, more than just Rita's Water Ice and Philadelphia Pretzel Company. There's a lot of other franchises for the record. You know.
And for me, open for opportunity, I go back to the Bible. Matthew 7:7 says, ask, seek, and knock, and the doors will be open. So the ask for the person is their courageousness to even step out and be vulnerable and say, hey, I want to become an entrepreneur, but I don't know how. The seek is the mentorship part of it, mentoring them through that process, helping them cultivate, and then bringing them to the door to knock, to put your money where your mouth is, take that next step, and leap out there without the parachute. That's the knock. That's the action. So we're all putting that action to create that exchange, that open for opportunity, that opportunity. So that's what it means to me. And I thank you for all taking the time out of your schedule. You're busy. You know, you're all your own individual planets with worlds revolving around you, but you took the time out here to educate, cultivate, and be mentors. So I would like to give a round of applause to our panel. And we do have 3 minutes, I think 2 minutes. How many? 2 for a question from the audience if you have a question. So we have one here. And we have mics on either side.
All right, good morning, everyone. My question would be, in this instance, a lot of times, as they spoke to in the last roundtable, people have trouble, obviously, with the finances, right, initially with the startups. There's also a lot of times the credit worthiness aspect of this. Can any of you speak to someone who may have had the credit challenges, but you were able to get them support, and then they still were able to get their franchise up and running? Any of you have a success story that you can share about that?
Well, I'm going to tell you, I was talking with a franchisor yesterday, and it's interesting. They were telling me that they did a significant deal with a private equity firm, and they were targeting black and brown communities and giving heavy incentives to the local people there, and also giving a piece of the royalty back to those communities to help those communities grow. The other thing is that you can also, in certain systems, if you have a credit issue, you can also, they might be able to help you find a partner that has good credit, right? That you could partner up with to open your franchise. So there's various ways to, to get there. Long as you're creative, you have to be creative. And one thing that I like about Domino's, I watch these commercials on Domino's, and they say that 97% of their franchisees, or some number like that, and Matt might be able to talk more.
96, I think.
96, okay. I'm not, my math isn't great, but percentage of their franchisees were former employees, and I think that would be great if systems created programs like that. I heard this in the previous panel, where the franchise gave you a path to ownership. You work there long enough, you get your own deal. I really like that idea.
Yeah, we have a few brands, and also a lot of more well-capitalized multi-unit franchisees are, giving their managers or assistant managers a percentage of equity, with ultimately an eye towards, selling them off one or multiple of their locations. So, they really do want to invest in the talent in their workforce. And again, back to Nusha's point, most of these people are not people that have gone to business school or, even undergraduate school. They're people that started at the front lines and, through hard work and learning the systems and the structure and saying, wow, I can be that because now I can see that.
I would just kind of say one thing. I mean, to me, it's personal. I mean, I like the mayor he's raised by a firefighter, his dad, his family, and I was a cop. He's South Philly, I'm Northeast Philly, right? So for me to go to community college full time, and when I worked my way through college, I joined the Army at 19. When I went to law school, I mean, I'm giving plasma for $25 a week and stuff like that, right? Just to make rent. It's personal, but now when I pay it back to the next generation, it is co-signing stuff and literally investing in what we call mentor capital. It's not just I'm throwing money and it's a business deal. It's a business deal, but I'm in there. We're helping them grow their business. We're helping them business development, and that's important for success. And that's important. Systems will set you free. Having those systems that franchise provide is a way to be an entrepreneur, a way to get after it.
Well, that concludes our panel today. I thank everybody, and thank you for being a part of Open for Opportunity. Please connect with everybody on the panel. Please feel free to connect with me. Connect through LinkedIn because we're all social. And I thank you for your time.